Welcome to Prisca Theologia. Today we're going to be talking about the ancient mysteries and syncretism and the Gnostic doctrine of the Garden of Eden and the fall of Adam and Eve and how that relates allegorically to our soul and how it splits from the monad to the dyad, or from splitting between wisdom and love, Adam and Eve, positive and negative, incarnating into the physical realm and being receptors for the one universal spirit that comes forth from the eternal one. So the eternal one creates a monad, let's say the demiurge, or it's said in ancient philosophy, the ancient of days, the eternal one is light and life, whereas the created God, Brahma, the creator of worlds and universes, is fire and spirit. That fire and spirit is in the sense, the same as the light and life, but it's expressed in and of itself that it has a means to an end. It has an end to seek. It creates receptors and physical entities to manifest shards of light from the eternal bosom, or the one, the universal Om. Once that produces these sparks, it is said that the souls descend from their higher ethereal plane, where they are made of fire and spirit, or light and life, and they end up, would figuratively speaking, falling or becoming entombed in physical bodies. These physical bodies are then individualized and separated into the masculine, feminine Adam and Eve characters that represent humanity as a whole. The universal spirit, or the universal Om, or the highest, most utmost eternal causal plane, is the cause of the duality that we see here in the physical realm, but it's not a part of it. And that supreme self takes part as the self in all of the entities. There's the one and the many. You have the one universal spirit, and then you have its many divided counterparts, but they are dependent on that one, not vice versa. So when liberation occurs, one becomes self-realized in their individualized form and merge themselves, or not merge, more comprehend and come to the awareness or acknowledgement or full comprehension that they are the actual child or offspring of this one source and are completely dependent on it. Hence where we get the more monotheistic tradition. And then monotheistic tradition is balanced by understanding the one and the many, and how the universal one also has many aspects and principalities that manifest as intelligent archetypal beings, so to speak, that are the puppeteers of the physical humanity, or the small physical vehicles that inhabit these rays that come from the source. So how exactly does the soul become aware of itself? Well, it falls from its spiritual dimension and goes into a state of death. In the Garden of Eden, it says, if you eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, you'll surely die. Well, they eat of it, and it turns out they don't die. They are clothed with animal skins, and then experience a state of shame, fear, and separation. So that's a metaphor for the soul becoming aware of its individualized separation from the eternal light and life, and understanding that they're different, of a different nature, of fire and spirit, and now descending into the deeper waters of earth and water. When they eat of that apple, the bodies fall from their more subtle state of bliss, where life is not so dense, and crystallize and become partakers of the physical dimension, which is the realm of duality. The Garden of Eden, or the Garden of Bliss, is a subtle reality in the fifth dimension. If we see the universe as planes or realms of existence in octaves, we would say that the fifth octave, that pitch, would be in the human body that resides in the fifth chakra, the heart, or the fourth chakra. That fourth chakra, fourth dimension, connecting to the throat chakra, which is the fifth dimension, constitute the realm of the Garden of Eden. That Garden of Eden is the subtle reality that we exist in. And when we exist there, we're eternal, immortal, and completely infinite. And when we bite at the apple, it's referring to coming into existence and acknowledgement of the duality. When we bite the apple, we fall into the sine wave, or the sin of Eve, hence the duality of this world. And we are, because of the demiurge aspect of the within us, we have that divine ability to not understand who we are, and we live life, and we fall into situations where we feel the thorns and the flowers, that we see both good and evil, that we see on truth and truth. And when we become liberated, we understand that we transcend them and go to the eternal good. So the Christ, or the Krishna, or the Supreme Son, which is the main being, Krishna says he's been here the whole time. Through all of our lives, he knows all the lives. Christ knows, I was before Abraham was, I am. This eternal cosmic principle is the eternal consciousness that is the main game player behind all of the individualized souls. And when one individualized soul, or one Neo, accesses the divine awakening, then in a sense we all get a bump up because we're all one. But we have to experience the pattern of life, or the law of polarity. That's exactly why the universal one created that aspect of itself, the demiurge, so that it could create a realm of duality where it could create monads and reflective aspects of different points of experience. And these experiences are like light shining on different mirrors. And when a mirror cracks, the light doesn't go out, but the mirror does. Hence, you could say that's liberation. But what if a mirror could be immortalized through the process of self-acknowledgement, of self-awareness, of apotheosis, apophasis, the highest self-contemplation or remembrance of our supreme self that hovered upon the waters of creation in the book of Genesis, that aspect of ourself that it resides within us, that is referred to as the Ancient of Days. If we touch it, could we become immortal and crystallized and transcend the ending of the body, and rather than just going back into the bosom of eternity, encapsulate a divinely individualized higher ego that encapsulates the non-self, the dark star, the dark portal, which is the beyond the substratum. See, Brahman is the substratum, the soil where all the individualized souls come from, and then beyond the substratum is the super personal, beyond impersonal, what they would call the Lord, or in this case, the Supreme Om, that Supreme Om that we're all descendants of. So all beings have this potential to return to this. That's why in ancient Brahmin traditions, they would not believe in reincarnation. And Christianity doesn't necessarily believe in reincarnation because they know there is only one supreme being. That supreme being that we're children of, the one and the many are the one is the many. There's one that is distinct from the many, who Krishna or Christ play this part, that they're outside of the individuals that are experiencing them, but at the same time, they're within them. So it's a divine theater, divine play. So when we depart from Eden is when we eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and we manifest into the realm, and our souls split into the duality, the two perspectives, male and female. And then we have access to the desires of the flesh. And these desires of the flesh come from the earth and water element that need to be purified by the fire and air, and then later merged once evaporated into the life and light body. The life and light body is the highest body to attain to. And if attained to here, experiencing a resurrection of knowing thyself, becoming self-actualized here in the flesh, and then once you die, rather than saying that, oh, you're reincarnating, or, you just know who you are. And then if that's still individualized at the same time, it's still that the child inherits the father's consciousness in a sense, and in the sense there's no separation. So you would no longer have any clinging to the elements, clinging to the nature of even fire and air, because you would have to transcend the demiurgic body. And the only way to do that is to come into this realm and experience separation. And separation is the alchemical process of breaking substances down and retrieving the most basic constituents or essences. So we have the liquid boiling, we have it coming out, and the cold water coming in, and then the distilled liquid causing a separation. Here's the soul before it's split. It comes down to this realm, experiences through the sexual act of male and female merging and cooperating sexually to purify using the fire to evaporate the watery, impulsive nature of the soul. As we know, water goes downward, fire ascends up. As Alvin Boyd Kuhn says, what better way does nature teach us than to understand the truth of that holy distillation, or that holy evaporation process that takes place? So when we actually go and close our eyes and we see the blackness or a fog, that blackness or fog represents the earth. And as we continue to meditate and purify, when I use the word meditate, I mean to say inward reflection. We're trying to get away from the word meditate and use more clarifying words that show the true meaning of the ancients. The ancients knew that there was only one universal spirit, and that the individualized souls could come to this awareness of self-remembering or self-reflecting. And Nedveda Vedanta Neti Neti, meaning not this, not that, to come from without of the elements, to discard the earth, the water, the air, and the fire, and come to the eternal dark portal within yourself that is in subspace or counter space. When that begins to illuminate us, we see it as in our physical demiurgic mind as light. So that darkness that we see when we shut our eyes becomes enlightened. When we go through the alchemical process, this inner sight, where the world becomes more subtle and filled with that light. So the metaphysical meaning of this process is when we no longer identify with the person or ego, the psychophysical nature. The higher self is embodied because it enters a state of constant reflection, constant remembering. Essentially, you feel yourself to be the space absolute, more of an elemental nature of, instead of earth and water, dense, coarse body, you feel like you're the Bluetooth energy emitting more air, more fire, and then even taking on a more subtle aspect of light and life, the causal body. But through that process, you have to come here and build those subtle bodies through the process of alchemy, the process of self-improvement. But not self-improvement, more so having one of these body transmitters or creatures that is not exactly you become perfect reflections of that divine light. Since there's only one light source, if one of these bodies becomes a perfected reflection, that we could say that there is that immortalization of that conscious viewpoint that transcends. So one enters into the Tantric mysteries because we realize that knowledge of good and evil in the ancient mysteries know, or the ancient text, the word know meant the sex act. This is why sex is such a huge deal from the time that we hit puberty throughout our entire life, because the entire nature of reality is based on the law of gender, the law of polarity. Everything has its own gender. Even the pineal gland resembles the phallus, and the pituitary, the yoni, the female generative organ. these two organs, even in flowers and plants and through all the different realms of existence, even knew that Father Sky impregnated Mother Earth and produces souls, which are the children, the infinite viewpoints of the one. So that one Bhagavan or personal entity above is the only being that experiences and hears. When we hear, it's the Lord that hears. When we see, it's the Lord that sees. But the individual self is not the Lord in and of itself, but is a reflection of that awareness, that light and life, which produces spirits of fire and spirit, which then produce mechanical machines of earth and water, which become reflectors of the divine. So it's all one manifestation, the one and the many. Just because a mirror breaks doesn't mean that that light that shines in it is affected by it. So when we enter the mysteries of Scorpio, we're talking about the 8th house, the house of transformation, and how these subtle energies transform from space. The divine mother of space comes the sun, the light, the demiurge. That's why it says Sophia creates the demiurge. That fire spirit that comes forth from the light and life has in and of itself almost a different mind or different intention. It creates beings and sends out a ray called the Okinadok, which is in and of itself birth, death, and sacrifice. That's why the sun is said to become born. And it's born between when the sun starts to rise and become, the days begin to slowly get longer after the December, when the nights become very long in winter. After this, it's born in a stable between Capricorn and Sagittarius, and then becomes the Lamb of God in Aries. The sun goes through a birth process and a resurrection process, a maturity process when it shineth forth as Leo, the warrior, the inner king. Aries would be more the inner warrior. So the sun goes through the process of birth, death, and sacrifice. The sun is said to die when it sets. Every day when we go to sleep, it's said that we we reborn when we awaken. We go through these rebirths. That's what the ancients meant by reincarnation. The soul's reincarnated every day. And then on a higher level, the same soul, the only one soul, is reincarnated or transmigrated into many different beings, but no individual soul necessarily has been said to reincarnate. But all is connected to one universal source, hence everyone is immortal, but it's just that there is only one that is immortal, and that one has many, because the many and the one are not separate. So we go through the trials of spring, summer, fall, and winter. Within the sine wave, we always experience these 4 seasons. This natural occurrence or this rhythm is under control of the demiurge, which is the fire and spirit principle, which moves upon the earth and water, creates all the demigods and all the different principalities that create this realm. So in Scorpio, when we understand that we have the impulsive nature, we learn that we can use the inner fire within to evaporate it and transmute it into its highest form. So we go through the interactions with the opposite sex until we realize that the more lustful, more watery, intent animal urges of survival and procreation are subtly transmuted into more of an innocent love, gentle, more tender, more compassionate, and less aggressive. Where we would say the more animalistic lust is more aggressive, we would say it slowly transmutes into more subtle. And as this energy transmutes, it's evaporated, and that evaporation is what feeds the astral body and nourishes and purifies the nervous system, which allows the body to become a perfect receptor of this divine transmission that all these physical entities and all creatures are partaking of. It's just a matter of taking that will of the spirit and the fire and letting it become project correctly the light and life onto an earth and water being and purify it and rebirth it, allow it to go through the birth, death, and sacrifice that the Son takes place. Now, Samael Bior talked a lot about the three mountains. And in the mysteries of the three mountains, it said that we have to go through the processes of birth, death, and sacrifice, giving birth to not only human beings, but to give birth to the inner child within, to give birth to the solar bodies, to give birth to the inner qualities. Just in the same way the sun is born every day, 6 a.m. it comes up, or when that sun begins to incline and light and the days become longer, it's birthing, it's giving birth to something. When all the light and flowers and fruits are coming to life, it says that they're giving, coming to life. And then also the sacrifice. That light, it said that the higher dimensions of light and spirit sacrifice itself and shed almost allegorical, anagogical blood to give birth to lower organisms. So our physical and water bodies are only alive, and we're talking here and interacting because on a higher level, there was a sacrifice of that spirit that poured out its life to give birth to a lower organism. So there's another type of chain or a spiritual ecosystem that's taking place beyond the veil that we can perceive if we open up our inner eye. So when we step into the mysteries of Scorpio, we know the phoenix is a symbol of Scorpio, the risen bird that rises from the ashes. Those ashes being the body. When the mirror breaks or is purified, the soul is liberated and returns to its one. All souls or all children return onto their father's house, the supreme Om. And even if they are individualized, maintaining their individualized form, they stay cognizant that they are all dependent on the one. There's only the one. The many is in like a grace or a gift, an eternal gift. So that resurrection of the soul is because from our own ashes we are reborn from the tomb of matter. We know that the matter is the tomb and the womb. That in the ancient scriptures, death meant to physically incarnate into a physical body and to be split from your monad into a Adam and Eve. And each one has a certain inherent quality of the other within them. And then they attract on the physical plane and manifest the awareness and open the gates to activate the awareness on the higher planes of existence, not only just the physical. So we awaken, resurrect in the spirit realm, and what the Taoists would say, the rainbow body or the causal body, not just the astral body. The astral body is subject to change. Hence, our dreams change throughout our whole life. Our dreams are not the same as when we're a kid or when we're an adult. So the body was created in the womb of life. So even though we are entombed in matter, we're reborn in the universal. The Divine Mother gives birth to a soul, a divine individualized soul that partakes of that light, and instead of shattering, retains that light of cognizance and floats up as fire evaporates water upward and dense water flows downward with the earth. So the soul that was pre-born then fell into the matter to be born, aka to die, which is also allegorically known as being crucified into the body. We know that the cross represents the four elements, earth, water, air, and fire, and that divine Akash, or that spirit, which is the fire and life, the light and life principle, the Christ, is enclosed in a seed within that tomb, waiting for its day of resurrection. So the story of these characters, the principalities of the soul, as there is only the Son of God, there is only the Christ, there is only God, there is only the universal Om. That Om is the same that vibrates and is cognizant in all beings and hears and sees all things. That's why in our lives we experience synchronicities, because these synchronicities are all related to the principles that take place, because there's only one seer, and that seer is in full cognizance of all the different entities in existence. Whereas our individualized self, this reflective nature, this machine that is reflecting that one being, in and of itself doesn't remember what is going on in all these other entities or know, because it's in a realm of condition. The soul, or that one demiurgic aspect, has been conditioned into the state of ignorance. Hence, when Eve bites the apple, we fall into duality and experience a temporary cutoff. And the journey back is to die here to be reborn there, essentially. So we're going into the mystery of Scorpio and the alchemical gnostic path. We become occultists and start understanding occult knowledge, and know that occult does not mean evil, it means hidden. And hidden means beyond the veil of the elements. So we have to start becoming aware of the unseen influences that directly influence our life and our actions on a day-to-day basis, and understand the difference between esoteric and exoteric, because the exoteric is for people that are barely starting out learning about the immortality of themselves, or where they come from, where they're going, start to ask questions. And then the esotericist is one that is experiencing this phenomenon on the inner plane practically, and paying attention to life in a very common sense manner, investigating the mysteries of its existence through self-inquiry, through experiencing the perceiver and the perceived. And we've learned the sacred secret, which has been given to the world by many, such as Samael Weor, George W. Carey, Santos Bonacci, Bill Donahue has talked about it. The chrism, or the fluid in the body that is accumulated through all the processes of octaves. When we ingest the elements, those elements go through a process of 7, and on the 7th octave turn into the sexual energy. That sexual energy is essentially solidified solar rays, solar light, which is deposited in the small opening in the top of the head that closes once you're past a certain age of development. This light accumulates as that sexual energy, and as that sexual energy is distilled and worked with according to the individual's temperament, then that being creates a new aspect of itself within, because naturally occurring this distillation process, the fluid creates the subtle vapor and pressure, which creates pressure onto the cerebral spinal fluid, which then, because of that retaining of the energy, ends up having the molecular globules within it, that when that pressure hits, those energies rise into the brain and stimulate the pineal gland. And once that's stimulated, that inner eye is opened. Hence they say the eye that I see from is the same eye that God sees from. And you understand the perceiver. That's why Jacob, when he went up Jacob's ladder, he wrestled with that angel, Samael, which is the angel of temptation, which comes to tempt you, that fiery nature within the impulses, because you have to extract the fire from the waters within. There's fire hidden within the water. And all the universal creations come from this combination of fire and water. When the fire hits, the fire of Purusha comes down and descends into the water of Prakriti. It creates the hiss sound. That hiss creates a vaporous steam, hence the soul. And within the same way, the law of correspondence, as within, so without. What takes place on the outer levels in nature and even anagogically take place within the body as well. So the chemical is the dense form of the astral and closely related to the invisible realm. The chemicals in our body are sacred secretions, hence they are secrets. The secrets in the body are the mysteries of Scorpio, the mysteries which is always known to be secretive. The body is made for this alchemical transformation to take place in the same way the caterpillar goes through the stage of the cocoon, and then the cocoon gives birth to the butterfly. The butterfly would be the immortal spirit. Cocoon would be the tomb or the body, and the caterpillar would be the snake, the vibration, the sine wave, the duality. So how do we practically begin to initiate this process? We know that once we initiate, the initiate is resurrected by the grip of the lion's paw, and Jesus is the lion of the tribe of Judah. And in the Vaishnava tradition, the Indian tradition, Lord Vishnu, or the Supreme One, Brahman, the Supreme Spirit or Lord, incarnates as Narashima, a soul principality, avatar, or more so prophet, who is the lion who protects his devotee by killing the atheist king. In the same way, Jesus or Moses overcome the Pharaoh or King Herod, because that is the negative aspect of the demiurgic mind. The demiurgic mind both is good and evil. The Lord says, I create the light and the darkness. I even give rain to the evil. Whereas the supreme God behind it, the light and life principle, the Father, is the supreme good principle. That supreme good principle incarnates as this lion aspect, or the king, Jesus, the lion of the tribe of Judah, which initiates us when we open our heart chakra, which creates the correct valve pressure to allow the animal nature of the lower chakras to begin to flow upward. So the supreme path is the Taoist path, or the way, and Jesus, or the Christ, that good principle, says, I am the way. That's just the direct path of the narrow way, which is microcosmically associated with the middle column of the spine. Because when you live the correct way, your energy or your seed or your divine soul deposit is able to flow upward, is baptized in the Jordan River in the spinal column, and then ascends and is resurrected as King of Kings when it sits at the right hand of the Father in the brain. Because as Manly P. Hall shows and George W. Carey shows, that the Bible, on one level of interpretation, is microcosmically biochemical. So our Adam and Eve split from the divine Purusha and Prakriti, the fiery and watery mother and father, wisdom, love, father, wisdom, mother, love, creating monads that descend once fallen from our more subtle nature, and we become clothed in matter. Hence, in the sine wave, we descend, and it says that Adam and Eve were clothed with the animal skins. So it's here that we experience the trials of good and evil in the electromagnetic realm of the demiurge, which is the fire and spirit principle. So the soul split and stays eternally in the gender that they are eternally, but only becomes reunited with the other aspect, and becomes one in mind, heart, and body, but stay separate in their individual souls, with the acknowledgement that they're actually just representations or reflections or children of this one being. There's only one Lord, but it becomes crystallized in its children. Because the two rays are wisdom and love. The father and mother create monads, or particular points of this essence. And that essence becomes curious because the demiurgic mind is, even though it's the same as the life and light God, the Father, it has its own desires, its own means to an end. So it creates the many. Then that essence descends into the realm of obstacles to gain knowledge of self in return. So the best way to initiate this process is through the process of self-remembering, and to understand that in various processes, when your mind is adrift, or when your emotions are clinging, or when your impulses are heavy, or when you are lazy, when you're eating or cooking, or even doing more different things like creating art, know that there's only one doer, and the body is not the doer. There's only the Supreme Lord that does all things. Hence, the mirrors are reflections of that divine light. And once that mirror is, would say, shattered on one level to liberate, or you would say maybe salved or immortalized, and then that light can have that eternal reflection. But either way, you are the transmission, not what is being transmitted to. So that's going to be it for today's video. I'm going to say that if anyone wants to do a consultation right now, it's doing $40 for an hour. And we're going to be going into this more deeply and kind of understand it in the next video, when we go into the mysteries of Gemini and understand the mysteries of the perceiver and the perceived, and the being that transcends both. and how Gemini relates to the Garden of Eden and our consciousness. So stay tuned.